It's exactly 2 minutes past the hour of 8 a.m. and at this particular time we're heading straight that's to the coffee court, and the discussion this time around will be on the real estate business, understanding how it operates and also is whether they are favorable for the industry or they should be adjusted. That and more in the coffee court.
It's a pleasure and thank you for joining us. The discussion regarding urbanization in this country continues. I know for sure that the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development is primarily responsible for making sure that Uganda becomes a better country to stay. Tonight on the Coffee Court, we discuss issues of the real estate sector and their contribution towards the urbanization of this country, and I am joined by the Managing Director of Urban Housing, Mr. Gawat Vincent. He's also a board member of Habitat for Humanity, but also sits on the board of the Uganda National Urban Forum. Mr. Vincent, thank you for joining.
No, thank you very much, Fred, for the invitation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We are talking about urbanization. What's urbanization from the real estate sector perspective?
Now, Fred, when we talk about urbanization, in our view for real estate sector, we think about one, housing. We think two, infrastructure development. We think three, habitation for humanity, and how the people use the environment they are in order to do business and also be able to bring food on table and offer services to the country. So when we are looking at urbanization, we are looking from the real estate point of view. We are saying, look, can we have the facilities and infrastructure that enable people within a certain urban area in order to, one, to sleep well, two, to do their work, three, offer services to the public, and also be able to generate income for the country through taxation. To me, that's how you can preoccupy my head towards it. So those three should be in perspective. The road network should work, the electricity should be there, the water and everything should function. Of course, food security in order to feed those people within those urban areas. And there you are talking about real estate and how people live and how they go to work on a daily basis.
Okay. So you're simplifying and bringing us to speed on whether that is attainable. But let's first of all broaden the discussion to issues of urbanization. We are talking about a very critical issue where government needs to invest a lot in this. Where is the connection between the real estate and then issues of urbanization in this country?
The connection, actually, the correlation is the linkage between people coming from the rural areas into either trading centers, into towns, or into cities. Now, when that happens, people need the following. One, they need housing. They need office space where to work. They need warehouses where to store food. They need all different things in terms of recreation facilities, bars, hotels, and all these kind of things. That is real estate by definition. So if you want to do urbanization, you cannot do away with real estate, because it is in real estate where people sleep, where people play, where people work, and where people celebrate. So you need the built environment sustainably, I want to mark that word, without compromising the environment for the urbanization agenda to take place and people live well. I want to mention the issue of warehousing. That is food security and food storage. Because when you have people crowded in one area, they need to eat. But of course, beyond that, you are talking about the issue of infrastructure development. We know by statistics that about 40 or 60% of the road networks in every country rotate around people, places where they live. That is a road that comes from my place to your place, Fred. The road that comes to your place to a school, that goes to a hospital, that goes to a shopping mall. These 60% of these roads, if you add those roads that rotate in Muyenga and compile them in one line, that's 60% of the road network. The rest of the linkages is the road that comes from here to go to Masaka, to Jinja, and so forth. That's 40%. So we are talking about road networks, the rail lines. We are talking about issues to do with the utilities, the water access, the power access to the neighborhoods. All these things make an urban setting look livable, sustainable, and of course there are other things to do. Garbage collection systems, drainage systems, and all these kind of things.
We are talking about just buildings, hotels, and many of them.
No, afraid it is big. It is huge, because you are saying people must be in a place and must work, must live, must be able to be healthy. So the whole network and infrastructure of what we sit on, hospitals, schools, shopping malls, all these kind of things must work in tandem in order to have the urban agenda really fulfilled. And of course, in the periphery of the settlement, there should be farmlands for people to produce food and feed those urban areas. Now, we are talking about urbanization. Without that, we are talking about really people just congregating, staying in a place, and making it look urban, but in the real sense, it is as usual rural, but again, you have issues of pandemics coming up and affecting the people. You have issues of communicable diseases. You have issues of garbage collection and sanitation. So we must think holistically about urbanization. Otherwise, we bring people into areas and we create more problems, in my view.
Okay, so you're talking about a sector which is critical, but the people in this country are not that enlightened more about the real estate sector. What do we do about this?
No, I think what we need to do, it has to come from the leadership point of view of the sector, and for me, that is where Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development plays a very critical role. I would like to break down the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, and we understand it. One, we are talking about land. We are talking about housing. We are talking about urban development. And silently, we're also talking about physical planning. Now, Fred, between me and you, if you hear that, is in the country whole backbone within the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development.
The physical planning is under urban development.
Perfect. But the ministry that actually is supposed to ensure that this country is physically planned, that actually warehousing should be in place A, residential houses should be in place B, commercial areas should be in place C, and the interconnectedness of all those, that's the same ministry. So if the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Urban Development is not prioritized in terms of resource allocation and staffing and capacity building, the rest follows. To be honest with you, if you have land issues, everything stalls. For example, you have a project is supposed to kick off, and then there are land issues that cannot be resolved quicker and faster. That affects immediately that project. Number two, if you're talking about road reserves, a road needs to go to destination X, but people have built in 2 road reserves. The compensation that comes with that stalls the projects. So the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, if we look at it internally, everything starts and rotates around land and housing, and how these two are aligned in order to offer public services to the country. So I think for me, if we are looking at the parliamentarians, when they are looking at budget allocation, I think Minister of Lands should not cross number 5. Because at the end of the day, these issues of land, these issues of housing, these issues of urban planning are also related to insecurity and security of the country.
Where is the connection?
The connection is, for example, I give you an example. If you go to neighborhoods like Kisasi or somewhere today, people have built roads in a way that actually, if you are driving going in front, if you meet another car, you have to reverse. Now the question is, if, for example, there was a robbery in between there, what is your rate of escape, whereby you cannot actually pass each other on the roads? That's already an insecurity gap. Number 3, if you are lining neighborhoods and all houses are in one line, and others' houses are facing this, you will point one camera in that direction, and it will capture from here to that street.
But your party should be blamed, you the real estate experts.
Yes.
And your team.
Yes.
You are partly responsible to be blamed for such poor construction.
Yes.
When it comes to matters of real estate.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is true. But again, you know, private sector is a very interesting animal. People are working day and night. It is income and expense, survival. So they need guidance. They need direction. The question is, most of the countries worldwide, you have to prioritize what we call institutional real estate development. Why I mention this is that as a Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, I would be able to license 20 real estate development companies in this country, and they build houses for Ugandans, than allowing 20 million Ugandans to build their homes every day, everywhere.
That's a very disadvantage.
How do you follow these people? One is building at night, one is building in the morning, and so forth. We need institutional real estate housing development. These national housing and construction companies should be boosted to build housing for Ugandans, and probably create solutions to ensure that housing is affordable. You will tell national housing and construction company that build roads with these kind of parameters, build houses with these kind of parameters. They will. But Fred, you're building in Kasangati. Me, I'm building in Ichigo. Another one is building in Weyogerere. Now, we have physical planners in this country. If me and you can go to cities or country towns How many physical planners do we have in each town? Now, you find one physical planner in a city.
You may be lucky. If you actually use Kampala as a case
Exactly.
study,
Yes.
one division has one physical planner.
Now, how does that guy chase everyone who is building day and night? If we allow everyone to build what they want everywhere. So they will build in the road reserve, they will build a substandard building, you bought a nice plot with a view to Lake Victoria, and someone comes and puts a chicken building in front of you, or a block of apartments.
So, Mr. Vincent, you've given Chisasa as an example. Chisasa is in Kampala. Kampala is the capital city of Uganda. Government in 2018 approved the cities, and I know you are aware that many of them have started operation. Talk about Gulu, talk about Hoima, talk about Masaka, talk about Mbarara, talk about Umbali, talk about Soroti, Fort Potro, which I know where you come from. So these cities come into place when the things you are alluding to are nowhere to be.
Yes. No, I think from the strategic point of the country, it is okay to switch on the minds of the people, to start thinking about the cities. It's a brilliant idea, it's okay. And I think for me, what I see with it is that you can wait forever to start cities because you're waiting for budgets, but you can also switch on the minds of the people to start thinking so, and then allow the local government within that city to start thinking backwards in how the city should be working. I think that's the roadmap we have taken. Now, what we need to do now is the leaders of these cities to stop thinking like local governments. Because a city is not built by allocations from central government. A city is built by generating resources locally within that city, given the uniqueness of that city. Okay. I will give an example. Fort Potro is named a tourism city. So the leaders, the mayor, the council, the clerk, town clerk, the city clerk, and all those groups now, we have to think backwards and say, okay, fine. How do we make sure that we attract all the investments that relate to tourism, Fort Potro tourism city? And so far, we can now start collecting taxes within the city itself to do the physical planning and the whole plan of the city, to start putting infrastructure within the city that actually reflects the tourism uniqueness, so that Jinja, a person can leave Jinja, which is a manufacturing or investment city, to go and visit Fort Potro tourism city because it is unique in that area. And what will happen? Once you have that, the restaurants will have business. The airtime people will sell airtime because there is interconnectedness between all these cities trading with each other. So if we can achieve that, then the cities will work. But if we keep waiting for allocations from the central government to come and run the cities, I think that will be a very different model that cannot lead us there.
Are you saying it's possible for government to offer you a city unprepared? Is that what you are alluding to?
I think depending on what the framers were looking at, it comes. The question is, when it comes, what do you do with it? Because it is already there anyway. So we can decide to do two things. Call ourselves a city when actually we're a town, or start working backwards to resemble that city that is already with us. But for me, the issue here is a city develops on trade, develops on the taking advantage of the uniqueness of that environment where the city is to trade with other areas that don't have that uniqueness. So if we can achieve that, then we shall have these cities start working.
You've had people say we were offered cities and never prepared.
Yeah.
From the lenses of the real estate, what is your take on this?
No, the point here is we are actually in real estate sector. The point I'm making is that housing, we live, we play, everything into real estate. So the question is, if we are going to be a tourism city, for example, are we going to have housing for people? People are going to come. We don't want to replicate Kampala into these areas. Because if we do that, we shall have failed. The borders, how are we going to manage them in those new cities? Do we also wait until they have become like the Kampala and therefore we start complaining again? Or we should also already start putting regulations in Imbale and Gulu to say our borders in Gulu, they will operate like this. And we shall have these numbers of borders, not exceeding this, given our road networks. Now, we need to do that quickly. But if we don't do that, people will just copy Kampala, bring it to Mbale, to Gulu, to Fort Potro. So the problem we wanted to solve in Kampala, we shall have not achieved it. The other thing which I would like to mention is that the road networks from Kampala to Mbale, we needed to think about that infrastructure. Either dual carriage and also the railway line. So that if I want to have a meeting in Fort Portal, because I want to invest in tourism in Fort Portal, if I have a dual carriage road from Kampala going to Fort Portal, I should not take it more than 3 hours. But as long as we also allow other urban settings, the towns are along those roads to keep expanding, becoming also other small cities along the road to the city, you are actually denying the other city which you have created an opportunity to grow. So what do we do between Masaka, for example, between Mitiana and Mubende? Mubende is not a city, but Fort Portal it is.
Fort Portal it is, true.
Then there is Chegegwa. It's not a city.
But
There is Chenjojo, but it leads you to whatever. So how do we manage these small towns in between so that they don't take away the glory of the city on the other side?
But also of Kampala, you equally have Nasana, which is in the pipeline.
Exactly.
Entebbe is just...
So we need to think very hard. It is otherwise it will be Fort Portal, it will be Entebbe, but actually Webaja picks business from the whole of Entebbe.
How important is your real estate sector
Yes.
to issues of urbanization and development?
No, we think for us, as we said, when you mess up with housing and real estate, you have messed up, for example, with about 50% or 60% of the whole urbanization agenda. Because, one, like for example, today we have speculation in Kampala. A plot of land today is 30 million, tomorrow is 50 million, 60 million, and so forth. Now, how do the citizens, the residents of Kampala, afford housing?
So they'll go where they can afford.
So now you have what we call uncoordinated expansion, isn't it? And when you have uncoordinated expansion, then now you're chasing. Because once people go into an area, they will start demanding for public services. And now to take a road there, you have to compensate them. Because you were not there first. So it is a big animal. And I think Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development needs to be given an opportunity, or it should be deliberate, that there are technical people there who know what this means. And they should be there, and they should have the resources to do so.
Okay, but you must also be aware,
Yeah.
if you are not,
Yeah.
that urbanization comes with a number of challenges.
Yes,
So issues of uncoordinated development
Yes.
shouldn't be a worry to you,
yes.
because that is what urbanization definitely calls for.
Yes, but uncoordinationness can lead into other things, because these issues of building in swamps. Now, yes, so you have to trade. You allow uncoordinatedness, but you lose the water catchment areas. You allow uncoordinatedness, you get pollution of Lake Victoria. So the point here for me I'm making is, must everyone live in Kampala? I think that was also the motivation of the cities.
And what is your take, whether must everybody, should you and me, all of us live in Kampala?
Yeah, exactly. We should be able to live in Jinja and do business in Jinja and trade with Kampala. And that way we depopulate Kampala so that it does not keep expanding the way it is expanding. And I think that was a good idea why Jinja should be a city. And should be a city, an industrial city. So that the whole manufacturing, but if we make Jinja an industrial city and we still build other industrial parks, not in Jinja,
It becomes an issue. So
then we have an issue.
maybe as we summarize the discussion,
Yeah.
you are talking about a ministry which is very important, lands, housing and urban development,
Mm.
with very little money attached to this budget. What
Yes.
needs to be done?
No, I think it's a discussion that needs to be done at the parliament level, people to appreciate the multiplier effect of the real estate sector. When you prioritize housing, what other sector do you switch on? That we must understand. And what does housing and real estate mean for urbanization? Once we get the parliament, the fiscal planning committee there, and the decision maker understand the role of housing. I can give you a simple example. We are talking about unemployment. When you're building a house, how many professionals are you engaging at the same time? An architect, a surveyor, an engineer, an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, a food vendor who comes at the site and starts cooking food for these guys or the porters who are carrying materials and so forth. How many people are involved at the same time? That is only the human resource. Talk about the other things. You need electrical wires. You need wood. You need concrete. You need cement. You need, if you see, and all those things are being manufactured in industries. So real estate sector has a very close relationship, ties blow our handles with the manufacturing sector. So when you switch on the real estate sector, you unlock the manufacturing sector at the same time.
We can't finish matters of urbanization
Yes.
in relation to real estate.
Yes,
Your final part, in short.
My final part is that I request and think that for me, my job is to give technical work, because I'm not a politician, I'm just a business person in the real estate. Is let us think about land, housing, and urban development and physical planning, and think about that ministry. If we can think about that ministry and its impact on other sectors, then we shall have got it right, in my view.
Listen, thank you so much for
Thank you very much.
definitely sharing your knowledge on matters of the real estate sector and their contribution to the urban sector. Of course, he is the managing director of Abbas Housing. He also sits on the board of Habitat for Humanity. He's also board member of the Uganda National Urban Forum. The discussion continues on matters of urbanization. This is the Coffee Court, and my name is Fred.